Discipline. Discipline is action or inaction that is regulated to be in accordance or to achieve accord with a particular system of governance. Discipline is commonly applied to regulating human and animal behavior to its society or environment it belongs. In the academic and professional worlds, a discipline is a specific branch of knowledge, learning, or practice. Discipline can be a set of expectations that are required by any governing entity, including the self, groups, classes, fields, industries, or societies. Use of the word discipline. Children being educated to use public litter bins is a form of disciplinary education that is expected by some societies. Discipline is followed in every school. If a child cannot use a litter bin, the lack of discipline can result in a reaction from observant people in public. Many people observe a form of disciplinary effort in their daily lives. Discipline acts as an important role in students' campus life to enhance their credit and intellectual recognition amongst peers. In academia, discipline can also regard the educator's responses and efforts that are designed to punish the students. Discipline is a moral obligation among many groups of people. Disciplined behavior is required by some laws and other legal obligations. Commercial entities can also put in place strict disciplinary requirements for the length of the commercial agreement. Airlines enforce strict disciplinary and conduct rules upon flight passengers. History. Disciplinarians have been involved in many societies throughout history. The Victorian era resulted in the popular use of disciplinarian governance over children. Edward Roman VIII had a disciplinarian father, and the English had modeled the royal families during this era. Edward's grandmother was Queen Victoria, who had championed the role of the family unit during her reign. Disciplinarians will enforce a stricter set of rules that are aimed at developing children according to theories of order and discipline. Disciplinarians have also been linked to child abuse in numerous cases and biographies. Self-discipline. Self-discipline is about creating new habits of thought, action, and speech toward improving oneself and reaching institutional goals. This is an alternative to viewing discipline as a means to obtain more information, which we can also define as exercising self-control. Or discipline is when we use the ability to give up immediate pleasures for long-term goals, also called deferred gratification, according to Simons. True discipline is grounded in your ability to leave your comfort zone. Habit is about wanting to change, not about wanting to sweat and undergo activity. To forego or sacrifice immediate pleasure requires thought and focused discipline. Self-discipline is more specifically, according to Szysinski, is about your ability to control your desires and impulses in order to keep yourself focused on what needs to get done to successfully achieve that goal. It's about taking those small, consistent steps of daily actions to build a strong set of disciplined habits that fulfill your objectives. Training ourselves to proactively follow a specific set of rules and standards that help determine, coalesce, and line up our thoughts and actions with the task at hand. It's small acts that allows us to achieve greater goals. The key component of our self-discipline is the trait of persistence or perseverance. It's the daily choices that accumulate to produce those changes we want the most in spite of obstacles. Without it, then self-discipline would be largely impossible. This is similar to grit. Discipline is about inner and outer dimensions. Discipline could be about the capacity to decide on what is right from wrong, internal consistency, and to use our skills well, properly, or routine compliance, and to adhere to external regulation, rule compliance, external consistency. Discipline is the thing that happens when you expend some effort, both physical and mental, to do a thing that in that moment you don't feel like doing. Discipline doesn't really take into account your thoughts or feelings. That, Aaron says, is the beauty of discipline, since what we do is something that is entirely within our control, and action is completely under our control. Secondly, it's action that completes, furthers, or solidifies a goal, not merely our thought and feeling. Thirdly, an action conforms to an value. Actions are then value-laden, therefore they are helpful and useful. In other words, we allow values to determine the choices we make, We don't let conditions or circumstances dictate it, like, for example, we don't wait for emotional motivation to drive us or happening to be feeling up to it that day. Aaron says that discipline means a perpetual practice of taking action that's in line with a rule or a set of standards, even if that rule has been self-imposed. Self-discipline may be an answer to procrastination, according to Rory Vaden, a leading psychologist specializing on procrastination. People spend time regretting things they haven't done compared to things they have done. When you procrastinate, you spend time on things you don't like to do or don't think you should do, and who would otherwise be someone who invests in something meaningful that could be beneficial to you. Procrastination is not laziness or relaxation. We procrastinate due to how we did last time or how we may fail to learn. Habits take on a three-step process. 1. Trigger the thing that initiates the behavior. 2. Behavior the action you take. 3. Reward the benefit you gain from doing the behavior. A life-changing habit is one that will help you to enhance our health, working life, and quality of life. The key to using this three-step process to our benefit is identifying the emotional state or emotional responses we have to prompt us triggers. Knowing how we feel, we can isolate the specific behavioral patterns that prompt the learned routine and reward/outcome, and planning out how we really want it to occur and take control. The behavioral responses are ones that prevent us from breaking through and hold us back. There's very many ways of satisfying our emotional needs and then changing behavioral responses with ones we like. Finding what emotional state we need to be in takes effort to figure out in a way. It takes some effort and cunning to satisfying the specific need of ours while having a new good or healthier habit. The reward is something that we enjoy. There is connections between motivation, self-discipline, and habits. They are as follows. Motivation is the initial emotional drive or inspiration to help us develop goals and actions. When motivation begins to waver, it's self-discipline that makes us continue on in spite of our emotions and thoughts. Over time, self-discipline becomes less important as our behaviors and actions turn into habits. It takes 2 months for a new habit to form, according to research by Philippa Lally and colleagues. Firstly, there is no reason to get depressed because it takes more than a few weeks to develop a habit. Embrace the slow move towards discipline. Secondly, making some kind of mistake has no measurable impact on any long-term habits. Develop ways to get back on track. You don't have to have perfect pattern or life. Thirdly, habit making is a process and not an event. You must embrace the process to get there. Commitment is key to all disciplined people. When you're building habits that will allow you to overcome your impulses, those are easy ways of achieving short-term gratification. We are likely to be free to be ourselves, and only if we have control over our own mind. Controlling our mind is so that we aren't bound to believe in or to be sensitive to failure, financial strains, or mental anxiety. In other words, we aren't being so reactive to life's problems, but are being a proactive player. Mental anxiety, even without listing the other problems, is playing a role in making us more alarmist and overly sensitive to our environment. Chronic stress can be detrimental to the development of executive function and may make us perceive problems where they don't exist, as outnumbering the solutions, according to Brett McKay et al. There is some research by Heyman and Hauser-Cram to back this up. Brett McKay recommends we focus on what's in our circle of influence, what we're in control of rather than our sphere of concern, what's outside of our control. Self-discipline is as simple as doing something difficult before going to bed or at other times of the day. It's merely controlling a portion of your day to build self-discipline. It's overcoming the urge to take the path of least resistance, primitive urges, in order to accomplish something long-term. Your actions and behaviors come as a result of your ability to control yourself. This is for better and for worse, 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 for worse. The habits are an automatic mechanism to save our willpower energy, About 40% of our actions are driven by programmed habits. To be self-disciplined, you need to control your habits. It's to stay task-oriented more often. They free up our mind so that we can envision and take care of the big picture things. The longer we hold to bad habits, the more difficult it is to break free from them. Also, the more we resist temptations, then ironically we tend to ruminate more, and thus the stronger those desires tends to get. An example of a good habit is holding an organized physical space. This makes for a relaxed, stress-free environment. Choices can be split between what gives us short-term pleasure but long-term pain, or immediate gratification, or interestingly has us experience short-term pain and long-term pleasure, thus allowing us to experience delayed gratification. Habits get us doing things only for a long while. It may not have us stuck to routine as we think, only as permissible as it can be realistically being able to. Discipline is making our habits to be done exactly as said we must do them, rather than relying on merely the cue for the help we turn that should do to a must do, so that we are in a better position to beat the competing behaviors. Doing that ideal routine when there isn't a cue to. Doing something as soon as we can is discipline. Habit is when we are prepared to and have that inclination. It's a good level of and relevant level of buffering of competing behaviors. There are 3 ways to learn to build discipline. The first is self-assessment. Identify the why behind what you need discipline for. Use a focusing question and make it essential your one thing that is going to get you to this. Find out the cause of resistance and learn to buffer it by doing your routine instead of excuses, sleeping, or giving in to peer pressure. Secondly, self-awareness is learning to understand why you don't break your habits. It's simply because we don't have an understanding of how easy it is to give in to our impulses or urges rather than stay on track. The answer is to eliminate anything that will distract you. Become indistractable, become a choice architect. Out of sight, out of mind is the saying applicably. Thirdly, self-celebration is to celebrate or reward your efforts for each win you accumulate every single day. Celebrate when you fail to live up to your expectations, as you now have learned something new by that opportunity, or better yet, celebrate your progress. There is a difference between active goals and passive goals. Passive goals are just goals we've thought of and include ways of doing things that can cater to those goals. Active goals are written. They have specific and measurable quantities or qualities. There is a plan towards their attainment. Included in these goals is setting long-term goals, as well as achieving and setting out to do daily tasks. Because we've set a set of active goals, we find it easier to achieve things this way. It provides some much-needed direction, may help us avoid distractions as we've put into words and written down just what we will do. In religion, authoritative self vs. weaker self. Illistraw says by developing self-discipline, we learn to control our desires, actions, thinking, and emotions. Mastering ourselves is the true outcome of a self-discipline practice. Straw says that there are 2 sides to us, one that is accustomed to comfort, and another that is accustomed to disciplinarian way of living, the weaker self and the authoritative self. We have to choose the one that is seeking to control our self-oriented approach rather than the one that does enjoy comfort and recoils or shrinks away from us to change in that of discipline, since self-discipline. Straw says that while comfort is the easy way, anything we are exposed to over a period of time will become conditioned in us, and we are then adapted to it. Thus, we don't wish to change even if what we currently do isn't comforting. Where friction and difficulty is often avoided at all costs. We are simply comfortable without change, and at least there isn't any effort being demanded of us to make change and discontinue habits. The main reason for this is that change is difficult, and we find comfort in the current routines and behaviors. With discipline, comforts aren't being used in preventing us from working towards our goals. Instead, we begin to seek out the uncomfortable, whatever that can help us produce change. The authoritative side wishes or wants us to experience change. The best examples is building good habits and rewarding it. Self-control. Self-control is countering a lack of self-control manifested in impulsivity, eating disorders, and addictive behaviors. The first steps of any individual seeking to better themselves is overriding these impulses. The ability to regulate one's emotions and behavior is a key component of our brain's executive function. The skills we are born with are innate to us that help allow us to plan, monitor, and attain goals. Giving into impulses right away is what stuns our internal and external powers and our growth. Self-control is refraining from doing certain things, while discipline is enacting routines or reforming ourselves to better build good habits. Self-control is choosing successfully between competing behaviors to your preferred behavior or alternatives, while discipline is habits accumulating to build on what's succeeding. Thus, they self-control and discipline may overlap. There is currently debates surrounding whether there is ego depletion, finite willpower, and whether self-control is innate individual difference vs. a learned skill that anyone can benefit from. Willpower or self-control energy is really in waxing and waning energy, fluctuating resource that is comparable to our physical energy levels throughout the day. Anyone can still benefit from healthy habits and take countermeasures to control our behavior, impulse control, or refraining. This is a difficult measure, but one we all take, since everyone has domains of life in which they could use this greater willpower. The four strategies are as follows. Firstly, situation selection, where we always avoid situations where you will be likely to confront temptations. Secondly, situation modification, as in do what you can effort-wise to reduce the pull of the temptation in the situation that arises. Thirdly, distractions, try to distract yourself with better alternatives. Common techniques.